Hello and good morning, guys, and welcome to this live session on entrepreneurship mindset. And we have today four great speakers with us: Ankur Variku, Girish Bajaj, Sahil Chopra, and Akshay Malhotra. So I want to welcome them to this program, and I'm sure our listeners are going to get some great insights today into what entrepreneurship is all about. And this is going to be some gyan which nobody tells you because everybody tells you positive things. What is it all about? Today is the true revelation that's going to happen. So I'm very, very happy, very excited. I'm sure you are very excited to join us in this program. So thanks, Ankur, Girish, Sahil, and Akshay for joining us and sparing your precious time. So, as I said, if you're good at something and you get paid for it, you are good at something and you get paid for it, that's your profession. You get paid for what the world wants, that's your vocation. You are good at something and you love doing it, that's your passion. And you love doing something and the world needs it, that's your mission. And when you have this profession, vocation, passion, and mission intersecting together, that becomes your purpose of life. That is the ikigai, as we call it. So today, if your ikigai, your purpose is to become an entrepreneur, then you are at the right place. So without wasting much time, I am starting with my first speaker for today, Ankur Variku. He is an entrepreneur and he's an angel investor, a mentor, and one of India's top public speakers, having more than 2 million followers on social media. You must have heard him speak. I myself listen to him very, very regularly on whatever he posts. And he was the founder of nearby.com, India's #1 lifestyle app, and was the CEO from 2015 to 2019. Prior to that, Ankur started Groupon's India business in 2011 and acted as the country CEO from 2011 to 2015. He holds an MBA degree from the Indian School of Business, very prestigious University of India, and he also has the MS degree in physics from Michigan State University and a degree in physics again from Hindu College, Delhi University. So that's great credentials, Ankur. We are so happy to have you. And I'm sure you're going to rock it. You are a professional speaker. 2 million followers on social media is not a joke, and you have made a mark. And I'm so proud that you are sparing your precious time for youngsters of today. So it's over to you, Ankur. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. That's a very humbling introduction, and thanks for making this happen. It's a joy to be speaking to all of you. I am so glad that entrepreneurship in general is just getting the visibility, the recognition, and the awareness that it frankly deserves. I've been very, very, very lucky to have been an entrepreneur for the last 10 odd years. As Sir mentioned, I wasn't destined to be an entrepreneur. मैं कोई और ही पढ़ाई कर रहा था, मैं कहीं और के लिए ही planning कर रहा था, and then life took a complete U-turn from what I was supposed to do. I dropped out of that. And back in 2004, when I dropped out of my PhD, dropping out of anything was not nearly as cool as it sounds today. आज जब भी मैं लोगों को बोलता हूँ कि I dropped out of my PhD, they're like, wow, everyone famous and successful we know has dropped out of something in life. So you must be really cool. But back then in 2004, dropping out of education, and especially if you are there in the US on a full scholarship and everything, it sounded like the wildest idea ever. And जब मैं वापस आया था at the age of 24 back to India, it's not that I had a plan or a goal or any sense of direction. I was very confused of what to do in life, and all my friends from school and college, they had got on to do some great work and they had got some really good jobs. Some of them were very excited, so they got married. And I was like at 24 just trying to figure what life is all about. And a lot of my friends were like, look, you're confused. So why don't you do what most confused people do? Go get an MBA. So without thinking much, I thought that an MBA would be the right thing for me to do. And I applied to various schools. I thankfully got through ISB, which was a very young school. That 1 year just fundamentally changed me. And then I got into consulting. And in 2009, 11 years back, I started my first business. And when I started my first business, I had this very glamorous idea about starting up. बहुत अच्छा लगता था दूर से कि अपना स्टार्टअप होगा, हम हायर करेंगे लोग, बहुत सारी फंडिंग रेज करेंगे, and then we'll be driving in BMWs and Mercedes and Porsches and we'll be billionaires and फिर एक दिन stock exchange पे list होगा. But none of that happened. None of that happened. Because I think from a distance it looks very, very attractive. It looks like the absolute done thing to do. But in reality, entrepreneurship is intensely and insanely hard. It takes a lot to navigate through that journey, to actually make it happen in a way that you get the best out of it, your customers get the best out of it, your investors get the best out of it, your employees get the best out of it. And since all of you are so young, you're in school, in college, at the start of your professional career, the only piece of advice that I will frankly give you is one, don't think of entrepreneurship as a profession. Don't think that until you don't have a company or you don't own the company, you are not an entrepreneur. Because the biggest thing that I've learned in life is entrepreneurship is a state of mind. आप जैसे सोचते हैं, आप जिंदगी में जैसे चीजें करते हैं, that determines whether you are an entrepreneur or not. And that very well means that आप एक जॉब में रहते हुए भी entrepreneur बन सकते हैं. When you look at Sundar Pichai, who doesn't own Google? When you look at Satya Nadella, who doesn't own Microsoft? When you look at Sheryl Sandberg, who doesn't own Facebook? Do you think that they are employees or do you think that they are entrepreneurs? And I would say that 100%, boss, they're entrepreneurs better than most entrepreneurs in the world. Because they think like one, because they behave like one, because they operate like one. And then the question is ki entrepreneurial mindset, which is the topic for today, how do you build that? And there are three things that I will leave you with, which will be my simple diagnosis of how you could get to this point. One is, when you are in school, when you're in college, especially when you start living your life, you will always want to be around people who are like you. आपको लगेगा कि जो मेरे जैसे दिखते हैं, बोलते हैं, मेरे एक्सपीरियंस जैसे हैं, chemical engineers hanging out with chemical engineers, South Bombay people hanging out with South Bombay people, and all the commerce guys and all the CAs hanging around with them crowd. तो ऐसा लगता है कि यही दुनिया है. And you love to belong to people who are like you. But the truth is, you only know different things about the world when you spend time with people who are nothing like you. When you genuinely spend time as a discipline with people who are very different from you, that's when you get to know a lot about yourself. That's when you get to know a lot about the world. So as a discipline, I spend a lot of time with people who are nothing like you. मैं 40 साल का हूँ. And एक पूरे दिन में, if I work for X hours, 50% of that is spent with people who are in their 20s. People that I genuinely find it hard to relate to because the world's completely shifted from when I was 20-year-old and when you are 20. So I'm getting to learn so much about how you live life, how you look at life, the struggles that you're going through, the stress that you have, the kind of questions that bother you, so on. And that makes me a better person because I know how the world's changing and how I know that whatever I think is not necessarily the right way to think. मैं अपने दकियानूसी ख्यालों के साथ ही जिंदगी बिता दूंगा और मुझे लगेगा कि वही सही है because I'm experienced. But the truth is, it may be completely something else. Spend time with people who are nothing like you. Number two, don't ever think that you know everything. Don't ever think that you are experienced. Don't ever think that you deserve to be where you are. हम सब लोग बहुत बहुत lucky हैं. We were born in a family that took care of us, that gave us food, shelter, and education and upbringing. And उसकी वजह से we sit on opportunities that most people in the world will never get to see for even a second in their lives. Don't take your life as for granted and don't complain. Don't complain. हम रोज रैंडम चीजों के बारे में कंप्लेन करते हैं. एंड व्हेन यू स्टार्ट कंप्लेनिंग ना, यू बिकम लाइक एन एम्प्लॉय. अगर आपने काम करना शुरू किया है, यू नो व्हाट आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट, राइट? दोस कॉफी ब्रेक्स, दोस लंच ब्रेक्स, बट यू आर ऑलवेज कंप्लेनिंग about your boss, your company, the hiring managers, so on and so forth. But people who move ahead in life are the ones who are always grateful for what they have and they never feel entitled. Which brings me to the third and the last point. Everything around you in this world today is designed for comfort. आपकी comfort के लिए everything is designed. You want a book, click. You want food, click. You want a cab, click. You want to watch a new movie, click. You want love, swipe right. Everything that you want is available for you when you think about it. So it tricks us into believing कि जिंदगी का मकसद is to make life comfortable. यही जिंदगी का उद्देश्य है. The only purpose of life is to make life comfortable. And that is wrong. Because when you look at people who are entrepreneurs, when you look at people who change the world, when you look at people you are inspired by, that you would want to be, you will see that on a daily basis, they are picking the path of maximum discomfort. वो रोज उठ के अपने आप को चैलेंज करते हैं. वो रोज उठ के कोई ऐसी चीज करते हैं that they are scared to do, that they are fearful of, and that drives them forward. That pushes them ahead. तो जब भी जिंदगी में ना आप कंफर्ट जोन में बैठ जाएंगे, you will stop growing. You will then become the classic employee. You'll be like, ये मेरी जॉब है, मेरी हर महीने तनख्वाह आती है, मैं चिल मारूंगा, एंड हाँ थोड़ी बहुत इधर उधर फाइट होगी, but I'm happy with where I am. And the entrepreneur is the one who's moving forward. They're the ones who's saying, मैं नहीं रुकूंगा. There is so much to be done, and I will pick up something that genuinely makes me scared, that genuinely challenges me, and they keep moving forward. Spend time with people who are nothing like you. Don't get entitled, and don't get comfortable. When you begin to live life like these, you then naturally get habituated to thinking like an entrepreneur. उसके बाद आप अपना business चलाएं, उसके बाद आप अपनी नौकरी करें. It frankly does not matter, because take it from me, someone who's just slightly more experienced than you will always be ahead of the curve. You will be ahead of the batch. You will be ahead of your class. You will constantly be at the forefront of making things happen. And that, frankly, is how you should think about your life and how an entrepreneur thinks like. I'll stop here because there are wonderful other individuals who have their experience to share as well. And I'm happy to take questions right in the end if there is time. Thank you.
So thank you, Ankur. What I wanted to ask, we have some questions here. So one of the questions is saying that one of the students is asking, like, were you always knowing that you wanted to become an entrepreneur, or did it, suddenly, what was that changing, defining moment when you decided to do this? Why didn't you take up a regular job?
There was no defining moment. After my MBA, I took up a regular job. And one fine day, I'm catching up with a friend of mine from business school. He talks about his startup idea and he asks me whether I want to join him. And bina soche samjhe, I was like, that looks like a great opportunity. Let's just consider that. Because I knew that I could always go back to the job I had, but shayad ye opportunity zindagi mein kabhi fir se milegi ki nahi. And that's it. I never looked back. So don't fall or wait for that one moment जहां पूरी दुनिया और पूरी कायनात एकदम आपको बता रही होगी कि ये आपको करना है. All of that just happens in movies. It doesn't happen in real life. It just happens. It just happens and you go with the flow.
Right. Thank you, Ankur. I'm sure our listeners have got valuable insights. And now you are training CEOs, and I would urge our audiences to watch what Ankur posts. It's really, really good. I really appreciate, Ankur, what you post is wonderful sessions that you take. So thanks once again for sparing on your time and for giving such valuable inputs into the entrepreneurship mindset. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next we have with us Sahil Chopra, who is the co-founder of Happy Nature Foods. I like the name, Happy Nature Foods, because we are all in pursuit of happiness. Happiness is a state of mind. So very nice name, Happy Nature Foods, a tech-enabled direct-to-home startup in fresh foods category. And he is an ex-management consultant with an MBA from the very prestigious XLRI, Jamshedpur, and engineering from Delhi College of Engineering. After such prestigious, from you have done MBA and engineering from such prestigious institutions. What prompted you to become an entrepreneur when you could have got a fat paycheck and just work for someone? I'm really curious to know that, Sahil. I'm sure you will be answering that. Yeah, thank you. So over to you, Sahil.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. and it's wonderful to be talking to young people today. And so, what I'll do right now is in fact, Uncle Bariku in one of his discussions had actually mentioned that there are only 2% people who actually reach the successful stage. And then there are 11% who are the survivors, and remaining obviously are not able to survive and quit. So I think I can safely say that right now you've just heard the story of one of those 2% of the guys. And now what I'll share with you will be the story of a survivor. So that will be the story of that 11% that I'll share. So I'll quickly just go through the journey that I have had so far. And through that journey, what I'll try to do is I will try to share some of the life lessons that I've learned along the way, which might just be beneficial for you. And so just I'll just go back a bit. And so I am did my schooling from Don Bosco School, New Delhi, and I think I spent the best 13 years of my life there. And then, like every second guy in India, what he does is that he does an engineering degree, and that's the time when he actually spends to figure out what he wants to do in life. So did my engineering from Delhi College of Engineering. Again, made great friends, and I'm an electrical engineer by profession. And so I think my parents are absolutely convinced that that's the reason why I'm extremely efficient at changing a light bulb. So that's my duty at home, and that is basically we're all proud that I'm an electrical engineer then. And post that, again, completely similar to what everybody else does. Did my MBA immediately after my engineering. Did it from XLRI, and actually that's the time when things start getting a little real, because till your engineering days, it's pretty light. It's all okay. It's fun. MBA suddenly gives you that reality check, and it's basically all a result of that inverted funnel that we're part of, right? So we're in school and we've got similar people and dissimilar people, and then you move on to engineering. You have more like-minded and similar with similar backgrounds, and then when you start moving to MBA, you suddenly realize, okay, so you're surrounded by really smart people, and so that's when reality actually hits you, and you realize you really need to put in that effort. So once that got over, I worked with a couple of companies, and in fact, in my first company, I was doing sales. And in fact, this is exactly what Ankur also mentioned in his session in the last 10 minutes, is that my first job was sales, right? So as I was saying, you move on to that inverted funnel, and suddenly when you start doing front end sales, it becomes like this. You start meeting such diverse people. And because you're so used to meeting and talking to like-minded people, that actually your growth doesn't start taking place unless you start meeting those diverse people. So in my first job, I met such different kinds of people. I was living in Dehradun at that point of time. I was going to places like Saharanpur, Muzaffarnagar, Haridwar, Roorkee. I met such wonderful people who were nothing like me. And yet today, if you ask me, whatever learning that I've had and the learning that I'm carrying forward from there has actually come from those set of people who were so different, who did not, I would have never thought would have given me so much learning. So I think that is a very important lesson to have in life, that do not discount the learning that you can gain from people who are very dissimilar. Always remember they will have something that you would take back from there. Post that, I did some more sales, moved to Delhi within another group, and then I went into management consulting. So, as some of you might know, the reason people get into management consulting is because it's considered to be very fancy, and people had told me that you need to have your passport ready, because obviously there'll be a lot of travel, and there'll be a lot of projects that you'll be doing with the senior management and with the CEOs. There are lots of projects in the US right now, so you might need to travel immediately. So take care, be ready with all of those things. So I joined, and the very next day I got a call that you're on a project. So I was about to take out my passport from Almira, and suddenly they told me, no, you're supposed to go to Bihar. So I was like, okay, I thought there were US projects available. They said, no, this project is in Bihar. And the next 1.5 years of my life I spent in Bihar. I traveled across 32 districts out of the 37 districts that are there in Bihar. And again, the learning that I got from those people in those 1.5 years would be much more than maybe what I would have gained had I gone to a US or a London for a project. Amazing learning, amazing people. Again, very, very dissimilar, but again, I got so much experience from those guys that it's absolutely unbelievable. Then moved into some other projects, and my last project was in Saudi Arabia. And again, fantastic place, fantastic people, lot to learn. So that's basically what I would say my journey in the corporate world taught me. That it is very important to get that kind of learning, not just from your peers, but people who are very different from you that you meet. August 21st, 2018 is when I formally left my job. October 24th, 2018 is when we operationalized Happy Nature. Happy Nature was basically called Happy Moo at that time. It was a startup focusing on farm fresh milk that we serve in glass bottles, delivering direct to customers' homes. So it doesn't happen overnight. Okay, so I had been discussing friend of mine, in fact, my best friend, who's now also the co-founder of Happy Nature, had been discussing a lot of ideas, and that was happening, I think, since 2015 is when we started discussing. So you can understand how much time it finally takes from the time that you start ideating to the time when you start implementing. And it's not that we had the same idea in 2015. We would have discussed at least 50 ideas back then. But finally, when it actually happened is in 2018. So there are a couple of learnings that come in from here as well. So these are my personal learnings. There could be other entrepreneurs who could disagree with that as well. But what I'll do is I'll share my learnings with you, and because that's all that I can do right now. And so I was able to work for 5.5 years, and finally I was able to quit along with my friend who is now the co-founder. And I'll tell you the two learnings that come from here. One is that there is absolutely no need to rush into something. So unless obviously you have a fantastic idea and you have the backing, and you also feel that if you don't do it right now, somebody else will do it. Although I often say that execution is 90%, ideation is just 10%. But still, if you feel, and then maybe that's a call for you. But in my opinion, if you ask me, I would say spend time in the corporate world as well. It teaches you a lot of discipline. It also helps you manage your personal finances very better. And I'll tell you why that is critical. Because your idea deserves some runway. If you do not give your idea enough time to get implemented and executed in the market, then you're not doing justice to your idea. Okay. Have your personal finances in place. Maintain your personal balance sheet apart from maintaining your professional balance sheet. These things need to be there in place. Only then would you be able to give sufficient time to the idea. So that's learning number one. Have your personal finances in place. Learning number two, for me personally, is try to have a co-founder. It always helps when you have a friend, and if it's a friend, it's absolutely wonderful, with whom you go through this journey. Maybe later on in life and after a few years when the company becomes more professional, it's a different story back then. However, currently, when you're about to start, try starting off with a friend. It's tough because both of you need to be in the same mindset. You need to have your personal, financial, family responsibilities to be very similar for you to do that. Try doing that. Try finding a friend, try doing it with him. It really helps especially on your bad days, it really helps to have someone who feels the same and is going through the same journey. So that's what happened back then. And we started off on October 24th, as I said. And certain very interesting things also happened, that you also go through a lot of personality changes during your startup journey. So one is obviously some lessons that you learn. And then the other thing is that you also have go through a lot of alterations in your life. So for example, I did not realize this when we chose milk as a product that we're going to sell, that we had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I realized, and I'm convinced I'm not a morning person. Okay. I hate getting up early in the morning. And I get up later than what most people would get up. And I realized that in order to do this, I had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I did that for the next 1.5 years. Every single day I used to get up at 4 in the morning. First alteration that took place in my personality. Second thing that happened is I am basically not a very social person. Okay, so I'm fine with my close group. I really enjoy with my immediate family or my close friends, but I'm not very social with neighbors, with relatives. Suddenly, when I started up, I realized that where am I going to get my first customers from? I mean, my family was buying milk, my in-laws were buying milk, some of my very close friends were buying milk, but then who else would buy it, right? I don't know anybody else. Suddenly, I started reaching out to my neighbors. I started reaching out to my relatives I would have maybe met only at a couple of weddings. And suddenly these people became so important in my life. I started having conversations with them. I started telling them about what they do. And you'll be surprised of how supportive they are. So while we think that they are only those relatives who we meet during weddings and then come back and forget about them. But trust me, they're the guys who'll help you in the beginning. Family, friends, friends of friends, neighbors. These are important. So suddenly, that's the second personality alteration that I went through, was I became a social animal. I wanted to talk to everybody that I barely knew. I was talking to them and trying to tell them what I'm doing. And because whatever support you can get, you should just completely take it. So that's how we went through our journey. And so we're a bootstrap venture. So we did not have any investors initially, and we were spending everything from our own pocket. But that again taught me another important, very important life lesson, which is that it is critical to be frugal when you're starting up. It is very important so that when you get that kind of money that you actually need to grow, you are very efficient in using those resources in the correct manner. So being frugal initially, because we did not have that kind of capital, actually has helped us now. And now that we have a reasonable amount of capital, we're still very efficient in using that. And that is what everybody loves. All your investors, everybody around you would also love about you. You're frugal and you're efficient with the resources that you have. So that's how the journey went. And we obviously, as I said, we started off with only milk. We were called Happy Moo, which was obviously a milk specific brand. We went through the journey, and today, after 2 years, we have a portfolio of around 20 farm fresh products, right? From everything from dairy products to bakery to eggs to honey to hydroponic vegetables. So everything that's healthy, that's cheat free, that's fresh is something that we deliver directly to the customer's doorsteps. How did we reach there? We had to do the marketing on our own. There is nobody else who can sell your product like the owner himself, right? So now that's, I think, the fourth learning that I'm talking about here is that you need to forget your ego at that point of time. When you're starting up, you need to forget your credentials. You need to forget everything that you had back then. What you need to only focus on is how to grow your business. So I used to stand in front of schools. I used to take my car out every single day. Every single day for 1 year, I did that. Morning, 6 o'clock, I used to take out my car, open the boot of my car, put a crate of milk there, put a laptop there, put a speaker there, right? I used to stand with brochures in my hand. I did that primarily in front of 4 schools. There's one school called K.R. Mangalam, there's one school called Paul Jordan. There are a couple of other schools in Delhi. That was my routine. It seemed like I belonged to that school for some reason. I used to stand there every single day, and those photos, I have so many of those photos on Facebook and Insta with that. My most maximum number of customers who are the most sticky customers till date are the ones that I had found in front of K.R. Mangalam School, because I was the one who was trying to sell it to them, and nobody can sell it with that kind of passion the way you can sell your product. Obviously, you can't do it once you scale, and there are limitations to doing that. Try doing that initially. It's a humbling experience, and that is the only way you can grow. You hire people, they will never feel the way about your brand the way you do. And then one more thing, and I think that should be the last thing that I'll talk about, is that you need to be extremely adaptable, and you need to be agile, and you need to be comfortable with change. Okay. So as I said, I'd started out with a company called Happy Moo, and we were only selling milk. Today we're selling 20 odd products, some of which have nothing to do with milk. And tomorrow, in fact, day after is the first day when we're actually getting into health services as well. So yoga is a service that we're now launching on Monday, right? So, I mean, we could have never thought about this 2 years back when we had started up, that we would actually be providing yoga services to the customers to whom we were trying to sell milk, right? And had we been rigid, we could have never even thought about it, let alone implementing something like this. So it is extremely important for you to be flexible, and that is what will help you evolve, pivot, change completely. But all of this eventually gets you to the place where you realize. So everything that you've done on paper might not be true today, right? I would have made my finances considering only milk in mind, and today I'm doing something completely different. But it's all part of that journey. It's all part of the learning journey, and eventually you reach there. And so now we're at a stage when, as Ankur says, we're trying to reach that 2%, currently in that 11%. But hopefully, because we're doing the right things, and I think we're on the path to reach there. Thank you.
Thank you, Sahil, for sharing that wonderful journey. I mean, that is very important. You're sharing, that was a very personal experience. You are going into with the car and selling that. That's what entrepreneurship is. It's not like, you are the owner and then you are sending people to do stuff. So you have to be there, and that's what entrepreneur. Many people get confused. Okay, now I am the boss. I will not do anything. I will employ 100 people. Let them do all that, right? So Sahil, that's a very nice thing that you shared with us. That when you start, you need to be there on the ground, and you need to be the person who, as you said very rightly, you have the correct passion of your product. Unless you do it, nobody else will do it. So many people will get inspired by you yourself being there. So there was one question, Ankur. I request you to answer, Ankur. There was one question that
Sure.
during the lockdown, a lot of people are losing their jobs. So there is a lot of unemployment. So what I personally feel is that if you are an entrepreneur, it's one of a great service, because you are not only earning for yourself, you are providing employment opportunities for others. I think it's a very, very noble service being an entrepreneur. So what do you suggest for people who don't have jobs, but and probably they want to do something? Any I know there is no tricks or something like that which you can put everybody would be doing, but still, if you have some suggestions, what can people do actually in these times?
Look, one is, of course, that you have unfortunately lost your job, but you thankfully have the comfort of your family and hopefully their financial support as well, which means that the job loss is unfortunate, but that is not something which could be threatening. And if you're in that situation, and I really hope that that is the only worst thing that has happened, then please consider this as an opportunity, as much as it seems damaging at the moment. This is a time for you to reskill yourself. This is a time for you to step back and ask yourself whether that is truly what you wanted to do, or were you just addicted to the salary and what the world thought or taught you to do. And finally, just get as close to the sun as possible. I keep sharing this with everyone in their 20s. Go and seek out people that you genuinely want to learn from. And it's incredible that you live in a time where there is virtually no boundary between who you wish to work with and yourself. There is virtually no boundary. Like, I grew up in a time, and some of you will relate to that, because some of you are really young, that there was a time when there was no way. Right? Aapki puri dunya was just limited to your school, your neighborhood, and that was it. But today I can literally tweet to Elon Musk, and if I tweet it good enough, he may notice it. And if I tweet enough times, he may get to register that there is someone called Ankur Warik who engages with my content. And that is how I get to work with such smart people who consistently engage with the content that I put out, or just write to me directly on whether Instagram or LinkedIn or Twitter or any place else, because they have the courage to do that. So I really hope that this is not a position where you do not have any financial support. If you do, please consider this as an opportunity. Step back and reinvent yourself the way you always wanted to, and get to work, internships, projects, anything at all that comes your way, and skill yourself. This is temporary. You are way too young to be fretting about losing 3 months, 6 months of your life. अगर आप अगले 40 साल के लिए काम करने वाले हैं, तो this is less than 1 to 2%. तो अगर आपके पास 100 रुपए होंगे और आपके 2 रुपए गुम हो जाएंगे, आप बाकी के 98 खर्च नहीं कर देंगे उन 2 रुपए को ढूंढने में. So don't waste your entire mind and peace in trying to just figure where these 3 or 6 months went.
Thank you, Ankur. That's a wonderful answer. To summarize that, I really love that sentence, what you said. Take this as an opportunity, because, when you are stuck with something, you never look the other way. Probably, there is a calling beyond your normal jobs. So look it as an opportunity, look it as a learning experience. Knock more doors. You never know which door is going to open for you. Thank you, Ankur, for sharing that wonderful experience, and your experience as an entrepreneur, as a CEO. So thanks a lot, and thanks, Sahil, once again. So we move on with our next speaker, Girish Bajaj, who also happens to be my classmates, and we are very fond of him. And he is he has over 25 years of experience in food and beverage processing and packaging industry. He's a mechanical engineer and has a master's from Stanford University, and he heads Bajaj Process Pack across India and Africa. So we are very eager, since you are a senior guy, you worked here for 25 years. So you must have seen a lot of changes happening in the field of entrepreneurship. Past 20, 25 years back, the situation may have been something different. But today, when we see everyone wants to become an entrepreneur, probably at that time, many only probably a few handful used to go. So, do you think the platform has changed? The playing field has, why is everyone going on for this? Is there some? I would request you to shed some light on this aspect. Why is there so many people going for entrepreneurship these days? And is it a wise decision at all? Yes, over to you, Girish.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Matthews, and hello to everyone. And I believe there are a lot of youngsters out there listening to all of us speak. And I'm very glad and thankful to Matthews to give me an opportunity to share my journey and my experience, whatever little I have. But yes, it spans over 25 years. And when I stepped out of school and college, so those times, even now, the first thing that any person, a family wants you to do is to do an engineering, which I also dutifully followed my instructions from my parents, not knowing what I actually wanted to get into. Post the engineering, I realized that engineering actually may or may not be my calling, because it was not really speaking to me the way I wanted it to. So I go back in 1996. I tried to do some sort of a small entrepreneurship myself, and that goes back to dabbling in shares and trying to do some sort of a financial consultancy, which had nothing to do with my qualifications, but everything to do with my heart. So I did that for next two years, 2.5 years, but I realized that that was a tough field to be. So I failed. So one thing I've done is I've always learned from my failures. Failure is not a bad thing. It's not a four-letter word that you should be always afraid of. I, in fact, consider failure as a gift. You should learn. As long as a failure teaches me something, it's good. So I learned from there, went on to again dabble in another venture, was to do with education. Here again, we spent about 3 years, then realized that to be in education, to be a formidable player in education, you need to have loads and loads of money. And this is the time when private education, the Shardas and the Amities of the world were kind of coming in and setting up. And I realized that, the co-founders that we were trying to set up, we did not have the money. So we again moved out. And that is where I like to say that I took a safer path. We had a family business where my father, unfortunately, was quite ill and he was not able to run. And he said, "It is up to you. You want to take over? Fine. Otherwise, I'll close it." So I said, "Okay, can I do something about it? Let me start from there." So from there, and this dates back to 2002, when my father unfortunately then expired, and I took over the reins of a small engineering company which were manufacturing small equipments in the food and packaging industry. Now, my journey from there to now, I would say close to about 20 years, if I may, has been a lot of learning for me. Every day I have learned, every day I have struggled, but I have told myself not to give up. And from being a small equipment manufacturer, by the grace of God and with the perseverance of me and my team, we today are setting up complete turnkey projects in the food and beverage industry across India and throughout Africa. We have, as we speak, footprints in 30 different countries in Africa, besides India, of course. So, what is the learning that I've done? There are 3, 4 learnings that I'm sure a lot of youngsters would be saying. The first question comes to me: am I meant to be an entrepreneur? Now, while we all see in various magazines and news, the entrepreneurs are roaming around in their BMWs and they're going on their private jets and stuff like that. These are all let's not get swayed by these things. Frankly, I ride a BMW by the grace of God, but for me, it's nothing but a piece of 4 wheels that takes me from my home to my office and vice versa. So these things don't bring you happiness. 5 learnings that I would share that got me where I could probably be able to exist and survive and speak to you all over is: number 1 is perseverance and determination. You have to be very, very focused. You have to be very determined, and you have to be very, very self-disciplined. Even today, at the age of 48, I'd like to share with some of you, I work close to about 12 to 14 hours every single day. And frankly, that is not somebody who's enforcing it on to me. That is something that I love to do. On Monday morning, I love to get back to my office, and that is very, very important. You should love what you're doing. Otherwise, if you're just working to be an Ambani or a very rich person, I'm sorry, this journey is not meant for you. Money is not the last thing that you should be aiming for. Money is a byproduct of all this that will bring to you. Third important aspect of an entrepreneur is a risk taking ability. You have to be a risk taker. If you're very happy getting your salary and 7th or 8th of the month, and happily spending it with your time, with spending time with your family, with spending time with your kids, I don't think so entrepreneurship is meant for you. If you're wanting to be an entrepreneur, get ready to get married to your work. That is when it will succeed. So for me, as I said, I work even till date 12 to 14 hours, and I enjoy every bit of it. And I innovate and evolve all the time. I have to be. If an entrepreneur, a business leader will not be flexible, will not have out of the box thinking, I'm sorry, that entrepreneur will not succeed. One more quality of an entrepreneur, which I feel we all should either imbibe or at least teach ourselves, as some of my co-speakers, my friends spoke, is you should be able to connect to people. You should have a lot of strong communication skills, and also wanting to meet people, because people teach you a lot of things. So unless I'm connected, unless I'm speaking to people, unless I'm thinking out of my comfort zone of the very group that I know, I'm not really learning myself. A lot of things that I see in entrepreneurs, because of late I've also been mentoring a lot of new entrepreneurs wanting to get into the food and beverage industry. And I see very young people coming up with ideas, wedded to their ideas, and saying, "Sir, this is what I think, and I think I'll make a killing." And I tell them, "Look, I feel first and foremost is you should have an experience." So, as Sahil mentioned, go out, learn from the players, go out, work for some MNCs, go out, work some from professional organizations, learn the tricks of the trade. Entrepreneurship is very good, but then ultimately you have to be dealing with very, very experienced people out there at every moment, every time you make purchases, every time you make hire people, every time you make these people work, you have to be very, very experienced. So that experience very much counts. Second thing also is you should have a financial runway that you should plan. I have seen a lot of entrepreneurs go wrong in this. That is that they start with some sort of a fallacy in their mind कि साहब एक हम brilliant idea ला रहे हैं और ये idea को हम 3 महीने से 6 महीने में pitch करेंगे. There will be that gullible angel investor or a venture capitalist sitting there who will dole out those millions to us, and then overnight we'll be 100 billion Airbnb as it is in the next 10 years. I'm sorry, these are fairy tales. Sorry to disappoint some of the youngsters listening to me. These are fairy tales. 9 out of 10 entrepreneurs in India fail. This is a sad figure I'm sharing, but that is the true. So you should also learn from the fact why they fail. It's good to get into it, but why? It's also to learn why an entrepreneur or a startup has failed. Some of them I have said, as I said, is lack of innovation. Entrepreneurship is not if you don't have if you have a me too idea or a me too thing that you're trying to do, better you don't do it. Either you should have a breakthrough idea that you are trying to share with the world and try to make a change. Get into it. Otherwise, don't try to be a me too. Don't try to copy. So work on that idea. Discuss with people. Do design thinking on that idea. Let it mature. Give yourself time on that. I've seen people jump into that idea in 2 to 3 months and then regretting 2 years later. Second, be very careful about your funding. Be very frugal when you spend. I hate the word cash burn. This something is, as a businessman, really doesn't make sense to me. But I see a lot of entrepreneurs talk about it. So cash burn very early is a bad thing to do. Preserve that cash, because it's a long. Entrepreneurship is not a 100-meter dash that you are trying to do. It's a marathon that you have to run. And for a marathon runner to have, you should have perseverance. You should have a long runway on which to run with, and for that you need cash. So that is very important. Don't run after. Don't design your business to be running only after when this venture capitalist will pick you up, fund you, and then buy out with $100 million or $200 million. That is a fairy tale. I don't want to disappoint people, but that's a fairy tale. Inexperience. Don't jump into it just because your friend. I was reading one business leader I really follow, admire, is Azim Premji, and he said, he quote, that getting into the business is, you should not get into it for the fashion of it. I see a lot of youngsters getting into it for the fashion of it. Why? Because that friend of mine and that entrepreneur in Silicon Valley made it big. So, I think I'll also be that second best thing that ever came to the entrepreneur. Don't get into it for the fashion of it. Get into it if A, you are experienced enough to sum up, get that experience. Don't rush into it. As Ankur rightly mentioned, you have 40, 50. At 48, I still feel I have 15 more years to work. So from a 20 to 60 years, there are 40 years to work in. What are you rushing in at, my dear friends? Give yourself time. B, gain that experience. C, ideate on the idea that you're trying to work on. Get very much strong footing on that idea, and then only launch. And very importantly, I think also I agree with Sahil, get a co-founder, get somebody you can work with. Working alone is a very, very tough thing. I can tell you from my experience. Get a co-founder. It's a very good thing. If you get a friend across, very good. Otherwise, get a like-minded person who thinks and has the same vision as you. And one more important thing which many startups do not focus on is that often I see startups running after that niche urban market. See, a niche in urban market in India is a very, very selective, small band of would-be clients. Now, it is very good to be focusing on customers in Delhi and Bombay and so on, but at times you should be looking beyond that. How can I be looking at an idea which can serve the tier 2, tier 3 customers? Which is probably give you a long runway in times to come. So with that, I would end my experience. I hope I'm open to any questions that Matthews you may have for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Girish, for sharing your insights. And you are a very senior person who has seen a lot of ups and downs, probably. And so, there is a confusion. When somebody does something, how do you define an entrepreneur? Who's an entrepreneur? If you have to define, so can anybody start using this? So, like, for example, I am selling something. What is it? Is a shopkeeper an entrepreneur? I mean, what is how will you define an entrepreneur? In maybe 2-3 lines, if you could explain.
An entrepreneur and a businessman, there are two different things. A trader, businessman, and an entrepreneur. Who is an entrepreneur? An entrepreneur is somebody who comes in with a unique idea. Important. He or she should have a unique idea, and he should be able to make that idea into a concept, into a conceptualization. And then such ideas generally are high risk, low competition, and unconventional. So probably if I were to define myself, I'm not an entrepreneur. No, I'm an experienced businessman. Why? Because I am in a business which many other companies are doing, but I'm doing it in a very conventional way with competition. But ultimately, an entrepreneur has to become a businessman. You cannot forever be an entrepreneur. Once you've started your journey, once you've set up that thing, when you've converted your idea into a concept, into a conceptualization, ultimately you have to succeed. So an entrepreneur ultimately has to get merged into what is known as a businessman. So these are very small, thin lines, but an entrepreneur is somebody who'd come up with some new idea. So if somebody tomorrow comes and says, sir, there are Baijus and there are so many other things, and I also want to do that, you're not an entrepreneur. You're a follower. You're a me too. So don't get into that trap. That's
great. I think what I can summarize from you is that entrepreneur is someone who does something innovative, unique, not what is copied. So you can define entrepreneur as that person. And what I liked about what your presentation was that one line which you said, in this race of life, the stamina is important because it's a long race. It's not a 100-meter race. It's a long race. So don't try to run very fast and, finish off it. finish it off. It's not the speed which matters, but the stamina in the race. So because the finishing line is not so near, entrepreneurship journey is a very long journey. So in this race of life, speed, more than speed, stamina was important. I think, Girish, I love that sentence of yours, what you said. And I'm sure the listeners are also benefiting a lot. So here there is a question from our fellow Bosconian, Shrey Tripathi. Hi, Shrey. This is a question. Anybody would like to answer that? What is the level of knowledge of economics needed? So for that matter, let me put it across as a general. How important is, learning economics or any other subject for being a successful entrepreneur? Somebody can take it up. Who has? I think all here are anybody who took economics in 11th, 12th here. All of our science students, as far as I remember.
I regret Matthew's not taking it. I genuinely believe that there are two subjects that every entrepreneur should read. It's economics and it's psychology, and these two will perhaps train you to be an effective businessman, entrepreneur, and successful one at that, better than most other things that we learned in school and college.
Great, that's a great answer. So, Shrey, you got your answer, economics and psychology, Ankur says, and he must be saying it right because he's seen it all, he's done it all. So,
I just think so. I just think so.
Genuine advice. But, any other questions? Yeah, so we'll be taking on other questions. So, we have the next speaker. Thanks, Girish, once again for your wonderful presentation. And I'm sure we'll have more of such sessions later. I'm sure you guys will be available at that time. I know it's difficult for you to spare out time, but this is for our kids, right? So Akshay Malhotra, welcome. And Akshay Malhotra started his entrepreneurial journey in 2013. Okay, he founded 2 startups, and then he moved into an IT consultancy role with Accenture, and then he worked in India, Mexico, and USA for more than 6 years, I think. And he currently is building his 3rd startup, that is an app which is called Pennywise. And the app is basically helping youngsters inculcate the habit of investing from a young age. So my question, Akshat, is that why did you take up something so, people dread to go into finance? Because as it is, people don't want to invest now. Because of the scams and frauds that are going on. I will also think if I want to put 1,000 rupees somewhere, I have to be doubly sure that it is genuine. So why did you decide to go into something like finance? Was there any particular motive? And I would also like to know what were the 2 startups which you did earlier? Was it something very different? And why did you move from a startup to then you went to a job, then again you left job, and then again you are starting something? So tell us something about that.
Right. Thank you so much, sir, for having me here. First of all, it's a privilege to be sharing the stage with all you guys. So I'll answer all of these questions in the small talk that I've prepared. I'm the youngest so far in this journey and still learning my way through all of this. So I'll just try sticking to the journey that the journey that I've had so far, and try doing justice to the time that you've given me. Right. So as you said, yes, I did start up in 2013 with my first 2 startups. The first one was we called it Orange Tree Solutions, where so what actually happened was we built a school ERP, a management system for school to maintain their attendance records, timetables, etc., and we did it as a part of our 4th year engineering college project. And somehow we felt that this project actually came out well, and our professor was very happy with it, and so we thought, why don't we try selling it off, or at least try pitching it to a couple of schools and colleges around Delhi NCR and places there, right? And then that's when we started moving on from school to school, college to college. Ki boss, humne ye banaya hai. Do you like it? You can manage your attendance, you can manage your timetable, you can create your your class plans, etc. And that's how the journey started. I learned a lot in that journey, interacted with tons of people, kind of understood how, back in those days, how would people take up these kind of IT projects? Kya really requirement hai in sab cheezon ki, or does it really just look good on the internet? Because that was not the times when schools were very e-oriented, right? They were not on the internet. They were still sticking back to the offline mode of classes, etc., right? But then, since what I learned through that journey was, it's going to take time. It's going to take me a lot of time to actually convince such kind of people who are into the education sector, the principals, etc., etc. And this is some business which will give me money after a very long time, right? तो मैं सोचा इसको छोड़ो, अभी हम let's start with something else, right? Or let's keep doing this in parallel. Let's begin doing something which gives us quick money. Everyone wanted. I personally, for me, entrepreneurship at that time meant रातों रात अमीर बन जाना, be your own boss, जल्दी से जल्दी पैसे कमाना, etc. etc. वो BMW खरीदना जैसे, just like Greece said, right? But I think that brought me to the second startup, which was called moonlightdelivers.com. Very innovative value proposition that we brought in. Us samay, there were startups such as Big Basket and other online groceries which were starting to deliver. And what we found out was, as college students, the night times is something when we get nothing, right? There were no Swiggy, Zomato, or any delivery items at that time. So what we decided was, right from 8 in the night till 8 in the morning, we're going to deliver anything and everything, right from your food, groceries, medicines, freshly cooked food, anything and everything, you name it, and we'll deliver it to your place. Great idea. We started marketing it well, we started doing the execution well, we started earning revenue from that business. But even then, I wasn't personally able to make it big. Now, something that I extremely, I'm very happy that I learned through both of these experiences, and I'm very proud to say that, is I was not an entrepreneur at that time. So this brings me to the point that to start a business or to be, get into entrepreneurship, you yourself need to be an entrepreneur first. An entrepreneur doesn't mean becoming rich quick, right? Doesn't mean आप कुछ बेचो, कुछ खरीदो, कुछ बेचो and बहुत सारे पैसे कमाओ. No, it doesn't mean. So before, just like before we get into the medical practice, you've got to become a doctor, or before you start to code and build applications, you've got to learn the essence of coding. Similarly, I feel that we need to become an entrepreneur ourselves before we actually jump into entrepreneurship, right? And then this is something which no one can teach us. This is something that we really need to teach ourselves. With that said, I moved on to my I wasn't mentally prepared. I would very happily say I wasn't mentally prepared to take all of those risks and be on that journey of becoming an entrepreneur. And three things that I learned from this was, to be a successful entrepreneur, we need to have a vision. We need to know what do we really need to achieve in life. हम करना क्या चाहते हैं उस particular idea या उस business से. Number 2, the attitude or the determination that we have. कि ये काम तो मैं करके ही रहूंगा, चाहे whatever be the the hiccups in between, whatever be the hurdles in between, I will find my way out through these hurdles. And number 3 was work ethics. मैं कुछ भी करूं, कैसे भी करूं, my ethics are going to be very strong always, right? It's not that I get something for 10 rupees and I'm going to sell that for 1,000 rupees. No, that's not work ethic. I buy something, I create a genuine product out of that thing, and then further I sell it with something which is on the same with a couple of bucks in profit. Well, I'll move on. So I was lured with this campus placement offer that I had from Accenture, and then stepped into my journey. सोचा था 1 साल तक नौकरी करूंगा, I'm going to learn everything and then get back to starting my new idea and all those things. But I think over these 6 years, I was very proactive with whatever I used to work on. I was trying to learn through all of these years, learned tremendously. Went to US, went to Mexico, learned how to deal with people, learned how to interact with people, learned how to interact with various clients across. And something that I learned there was, I was till date trying to solve problems. So in this journey, just going a step back, I was working in the healthcare space when I was in Accenture, right? And when I was working in the healthcare space, I was all learning about the problems that actually people face with respect to the healthcare measures, or one particular topic that I was very very interested at that time was mental health, because people were really facing a lot of mental health issues, and what is it that we can do to solve for those issues. But that brought me to a very very important learning. There were tons of ideas that came into my mind. मेरे को लगता था अरे ये बहुत सही idea है and things like that. But actually, that only resonated in my mind, right? It wasn't really resonating with people out there, which gave me a very important learning that we must first try to solve problems that we face. Something that we face as a problem in life and can have a solution to that, that would be the best start of an idea to start your journey, which kind of answers one of the questions that was asked by a person in the chat some time back. So look out for problems that you faced in life. Look out for problems what are going around in your life right now, and find solutions for that, right? Which brought me to the idea of Pennywise, right? So something which I learned very very late in life. I was about 25 26 years of age. Zyada savings nahi thi, investments nahi thi. And luckily, since I moved abroad, I had some extra money with me, and I was looking for various options. How can I get started? How do I save? How do I invest my money? And things like that. And during that time, I actually learned this very important concept of compounding, something that we learn in our class 7, class 8, but we never really understand the practical application of that. I didn't really understand the practical application of it. And so I thought that, I couldn't really start saving or investing when I was 18, 19, because number one, I didn't have the right knowledge for it. And number two, I didn't really have the right tools or the right ways to start investing my money. So उस समय पैसे थे, I would still give some tuitions or do something or the other, and I would have still some money, but I didn't really know how to go about it, right? So all good, everything good, and then what we realized was maximum number of students today, they don't have the right knowledge. At the same time, they don't even, so financial education is not really talked about, and at the same time, this is once we cannot really expect students to start shelling out 500,000 rupees per month out of their pocket into a generic SIP or things like that, right? So what we figured out, a problem that I actually felt in myself, कि अगर मेरे को उस समय ऐसा कोई, मेरे पास 500 रुपए नहीं थे, I didn't have 1,000 rupees, but I had that 1, 2, 5, 10 rupees that maybe I could have actually saved and made big with these through all these years. And that's exactly the idea of Pennywise, that the traditional gullak that we have in our homes, if we take it to the e-form, every time somebody spends something through their e-wallets, through their Paytm, Google Pay, etc., can we actually help them invest their spare change, right? And that brought the idea of Pennywise, because that was a problem that I faced. I could understand that if I had the right sources at that point of time, how better I could be at managing my personal finances, and that gave me my next breakthrough. Having said that, with that, I've kind of finally started doing my research. Definitely, just like the others in the panel also said, that it was not a day's decision to just quit my job and start working on Pennywise. It took me a couple of months to actually settle it down, think of this idea, mature this idea, discuss it with people. And this is the next learning that I'm going to share with all of you. That till date I always used to think, यार ये मेरा idea है, मैं किसी से share नहीं कर सकता, क्योंकि मैं किसी से share करूंगा तो ये चोरी हो जाएगा. But that brought me to this very important understanding. It's not the idea, just like Sahil said, it's not the idea. Idea is a very small role when it comes to playing entrepreneurship for a long period of time. It's the execution and it's the determination of how you actually get things working for you. So with that, I discussed that idea with tons of people. And in fact, I'll share one experience. There was the same thing that we were trying to do was kind of existing in another app already. And I was very, very, very upset for a day. Ki, Arey, yaar, ye idea to already is shit. I'll have to drop this. I'll have to move somewhere else. But what actually, there was this thing that came into my mind, that instead of actually taking a step back right now, let me go and discuss. And I actually reached out to the CEO of that particular organization, pinged him on LinkedIn, and got on a call with him. and shared everything very honestly. कि बस मैं ये करना चाह रहा हूँ. Can you share your details with me? Can you share your learnings and experiences with me? And if you by any chance you think that this is not going to be good, can you tell me about it? And trust me, that person gave me all the knowledge. I'm still connected to him. He gives me he's given me so much of knowledge and resources that has actually helped me build this startup. And that actually kind of gave me the realization was idea is not big. Discuss it with as many people as you can, because that helps you actually nurture the idea. That actually helps you mature the idea, right? And then I know. So with that, I got to understand the next very important concept of bootstrapping and raising your money, right? So for from the kind of background that I'm come up from, and over the last few years, the way the startup industry has grown up, हर जगह the only news we see is funding raise हो गया 10 billion, 100 billion, etc., etc., etc. And which kind of actually was there at the back of my mind कि यार अगर स्टार्टअप करना है तो फंडिंग तो चाहिए होगी, है ना? अपने पास पैसा कहाँ है या whatever, we don't have the right side of money to actually get going on a startup. But on the other hand, I learned this very important concept called about bootstrapping. And what I could easily understand was startup is nothing but a business. Business क्या होता है? By definition, business is something you buy a product and sell it, or you giving a service and you charging some money for it. Which brought me to the understanding that instead of actually thinking of the day one, when you actually think of business, you need to think of how will this idea or how will this business generate money for myself, generate money for the company and for myself, right? But these days we hear of terms like customer acquisition, getting your right first customers, things like that. And what we just miss is कि यार अभी पहले customers आ जाएं आपके ऊपर, या customers आ जाएं हमारे product and services को use करने, and we'll think about earning money later. But with my experience, this is something that I learned, that if you know how you will make money out of this particular idea over the next 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, you will never really need to go out and search for funding in your initial days, right? You have your basic savings, as the others said. You need to take care of your personal finances. You have some savings, you have some investments. Use them. Reach out to reach the stage where you've actually made something where people are coming and using it, giving you your feedback, and at the same time paying you for the services that you're giving them. And only once you're at a stage where you're now ready to take it to the next level, let's say you've successfully delivered your product to the first 1,000, 10,000 customers, whatever you aim for, and then you're able to kind of think of, scaling it up to lakhs or millions. That's when you actually need money. Usse pehle you don't need money. You don't need funding, right? I like to quote a very famous businessman called Mark Cuban, and he said that when you raise money, it's not an accomplishment but an obligation. You're actually it's nothing but a sort of a loan. Just like you take a loan from a bank and you pay it back to them in the form of an interest. In this way, when you take money from any venture capitalist angel funding, you are actually giving the equity of your company, right? So it's nothing but a kind of a loan. So my suggestion to all of you would be, कोई हरी करने की जरूरत नहीं है. Take your time. It takes a lot of time to build companies, right? It takes years to build a successful company. There is nothing called an overnight fame. There's nothing called कि आज शुरू करूंगा startup and कल जाके मैं अपनी Mercedes खरीद लूंगा. Nothing of that sort. Give yourself time. Make yourself matured enough to be an entrepreneur, to actually be determined to go on that path. Read as much as you can. जितनी books पढ़ सकते हो पढ़ो. Somebody told me that by reading a book, some person who's learned something over 20 years of his life, you are able to grasp all of that over a couple of days, right? So read as much as you can and network as much as you can, right? Just reach out to people. I'm telling you, before starting Pennywise, I discussed with tons of CEOs, tons of founders, and each and every one of them was so helpful that they actually gave me their direct numbers, call me, WhatsApp me. मेरे को लगता था, oh shit, मैं इस CEO को WhatsApp करने वाला हूँ, oh my god. But everyone is so friendly. They're so happy to share their knowledge. They're so happy to share their experiences. You just need to reach out there and ask them for these things. So with that, I think those are the experiences and the suggestions that I wanted to share. And back to Matthew sir. Very happy to take
Yeah,
any
thank you, Akshat, for that lovely sharing. I'm sure a lot of youngsters who want to go for entrepreneurship have gained a lot by your insights. And and all of our wonderful speakers, what connects us all is that for those of you who don't know, we are all Bostonians. So ever more and better ever. Girish has been my classmate. Ankur, you passed out in '96, I think. I had joined as a young teacher at that time, so I haven't taught. But Sahil and Akshat definitely are my students. So we are connected by this great bonding of being a Bostonian, and I'm so happy that we could come together and organize this program for not only for Bostonians, but for every student, everybody who's interested in entrepreneurship. So thank you once again. I'm sure this has been a fruitful session, and there are so many queries which will keep on coming over a period of time. But since the recording is available, I'm sure they will be able to go through this. But just to end end this program, one question is that suppose I want to become an entrepreneur today. So what are the two qualities? I want everyone to just put two qualities. What do you think is the most important quality that you should have? Now, as Ankur said very correctly, and even Akshat had said, when they shared their experiences, it involves a lot of networking. And I'm so happy that Sahil shared that he was a sort of a private guy. He had a close, circle of friends, but he changed this himself. It's not difficult to change. And Akshat, he called to certain CEOs, WhatsApp with them. And Ankur said that, on Twitter, it's not so easy it's not very difficult to even connect with Elon Musk. So the world is a small place. Anything is possible. So guys, can you share something like, what are the two qualities you think? Can everything be learned? First of all, if I go for an entrepreneurship course, can I learn this? Or, we listen to people like Ambani and all that who don't have any degree in management and all, but still are doing so exceptionally well. So what do you think about any two qualities that you suggest, besides, of course, the academic? First question, can this be learned? Can the trick of entrepreneurship be learned? And secondly, what are the two qualities that you see in an entrepreneur today? Girish, we can start with you.
Matthew, you rightly said that while we can take some tips from people, entrepreneurship is a mindset. It is not something that I can sort of gain. While there are firstly, it's a mindset. And one of the two major things that I feel as an entrepreneur is very important. One is the risk-taking capability. And I say that with a very, pinch of salt. At times, this risk-taking ability is also misused or misinterpreted as being rash also. So it's a very thin line that deviates what is a risk-taking ability and what is a rash. So you should be mature enough to know which either of the two, and have some sounding boards around you to guide you and tell you, okay, guys, I think you guys are going overboard. So one is a risk-taking ability, very important.
Yes.
And second is self-discipline. Any entrepreneur, as Sahil and others, my co-speakers said, can you imagine Sahil in school thinking, I'll get up in 4 o'clock in the morning and go to the market end? I'll tell you my story. I have actually I've had a car breakdown in middle of Saharan deserts, and yet, woke up the next day, walked at least 15 kilometers in that scorching heat, woke up next day and then went on for my meeting. So you have to be very, very focused, determined. Self-discipline is the key. Unless and until you are yourself self-disciplined, there is no mummy or papa telling you, beta, kal subah utke tumhe office jana hai, make sure you do your homework in class. Yahan pe koi nahi hai. Today is a Saturday.
Thank you. Taking risks and self-discipline. Ankur, what are the two qualities that you see?
I think most of us will keep resonating on the same lines. For me, if I were to just identify as that words, it would be courage and emotional strength. Courage, I believe, defines everything. And because it's just insanely hard, you need to have emotional strength from within.
So, Ankur, do you think that this can be learned in a business school? Or it's a mindset, as Girish says? Can we learn it? Suppose I have I want to become an entrepreneur. I don't know anything about it. Can I go to a business school and learn something about it and I become good at it?
No, entrepreneurship can be learned, but the best part about it and also the worst part about it is that it is not taught in any school and it can't be learned in any school. It is learned best through living life and by experiencing it. So it can be learned and सब पेट से तो पैदा होते नहीं है, but it takes a very different curriculum to go through it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Sahil, your take on this?
So I'll basically give just two small, very quotes which will try to summarize these two qualities. So first of all is that do not do when you think, but do not think when you do. So a lot of us end up becoming thinkers through our educational background and what we've done in the corporate world. And we spend 90% of the time thinking and very little time doing. So I think in entrepreneurship, I think doing is a big aspect. So learn to become doers. Yes, thinking is important, but then become doers.
Yes.
Second is again something similar, that there are three responses to a product. It's good, bad, and it's wow. So always try to create that wow. So I mean, do not be satisfied with creating the good, right? If you have an opportunity, create a wow for somebody, and that's what will differentiate you from the rest.
Thank you, Sahil. I like that word, especially be a doer. Don't keep on planning. Most of the meetings mein kya hota hai? They are planning for the next meeting instead of doing something. Every meeting, the agenda is planning for the next meeting. So be a doer, talk less, work more. Action speaks louder than words. Lovely words. Akshat, your concluding words.
Right, sir. I'll actually just say one quality which I felt is the most needed, which is the right attitude and the determination. Right? अगर ठान लिए कि करना है तो करना ही है. So if you have the right attitude, you will make things work for you. There's not going to be any skipping. You will find a way through the problem and find a solution. So if you have the right attitude, if you have the right determination to achieve it, I think that's what makes you an entrepreneur.
So thank you guys for the wonderful session. As promised, we have kept 1 hour 15 minutes, so time is up. We shouldn't drag on this. So thank you once again for taking out time, Ankur, Girish, Sahil, and Akshat. I am so overwhelmed and that you could take out time. You could have kept this time for putting your ideas into action. But you, as Akshat said, there's no use. There is also a use of sharing this because so many people get inspired. So there are new insights. And probably after this session, even if we are able to inspire one kid out there to become an entrepreneur, I think we are successful. So on this note, thank you so much and have a good day. Thanks.
Thank you. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.